Now, The Witcher 3 is not only my favourite RPG of all time, but it's also my favourite game of all time. And in this video today, I'll be explaining the reasons as to why The Witcher 3 is my favourite game, and why I love it so much. Now, where to even begin on this game? I guess let's just start with the story. So basically, The Witcher 3 is about a Witcher by the name of Geralt of Rivia, and I'll give a brief rundown for those who aren't familiar with the Witcher universe. Basically, a Witcher is a monster hunter, or like monster slayer, for hire. You pay them and they slay monsters, and also, they're not regular humans. They are genetically altered. They're faster, stronger. They're better than your average human when it comes to like strength and speed and whatnot. But like that's just the basic summary of what a Witcher is. So you play as a Witcher, not just any old Witcher, the White Wolf himself, Geralt of Rivia. So basically, Geralt is famous in the Witcher universe. So a lot of people know who he is. So you play as Geralt, and you're on a journey to find Ciri. Now, who's Ciri? Ciri is basically Geralt's daughter, not by blood, but he basically raised Ciri. So, he taught Ciri everything he knows. He's basically like a father to her. Now, Ciri is actually being hunted by the Wild Hunt, and they basically want to find her because of her elder blood. And the Wild Hunt want her elder blood so that they can open, I think it's like some kind of gate to get to go to other worlds. I'm kind of fuzzy on the details there, but basically they want to find and pretty much sacrifice Ciri. Now, as Geralt, you want to find her before they do, obviously. Now, I know there is like a sense of urgency with the game's plot and everything, but you really can take as much time as you want. Like, you don't need to immediately do the story and find Ciri. You can complete side quests and fuck around, play Gwent, collect all the Gwent cards, You can pretty much just take your time. You don't have to rush the story. I recommend that you don't rush the story. Like, take your time with this game. It'll be worth it. Every second of this game is worth it. Now, that was just a basic summary of the story. I mean, I can go far more in depth, but I'll just talk about other stuff for now. So, basically, this game is an RPG, as I said at the beginning. There are a lot of fantastic RPGs out there. You got like the Fallout series, like Fallout New Vegas and all that. You got Elder Scrolls, Breath of the Wild is another great RPG. Final Fantasy, I know that's a JRPG, but it still counts, but you get the idea. There's a lot of amazing RPGs out there, but The Witcher 3 just tops them all in my opinion. Now, I know a lot of people have different opinions. Like, if you think the Fallout games and the Elder Scrolls games are better, then that's fine. Like, they're clearly more your cup of tea, but I like The Witcher better. And I'll explain why, because The Witcher 3 perfectly blends good storytelling and RPG elements into one, in my opinion. So, basically, you got I was going to compare the storytelling to the likes of a Naughty Dog game like Uncharted or The Last of Us, but, I mean, the thing with The Witcher 3 is the story itself isn't that great, but, like, it's what happens within the story that's good. So, it's got a very surface-level premise, but it's what happens within that is so great. So yeah, it's got the like storytelling of a Naughty Dog game, I'd say, like Last of Us and all that. Whether you agree or disagree with that is fine, but that's just it's a good comparison in my opinion. So you got the storytelling of like a Last of Us Uncharted game, combined with the open world of like Breath of the Wild or like Skyrim or whatever. And in my opinion, The Witcher 3 does both of them perfectly. You got a great story with really memorable characters. The Bloody Baron, for example, who he's a character in the very first story arc of The Witcher 3, so the Velen arc. Very memorable character. Velen's probably, story-wise, the Velen arc is probably the best. Like, story-wise. But yeah, you got memorable characters, memorable moments. you know, the story's great in my opinion. And speaking of the story arcs, there's 3 of them. So you start from Velen. You got the Bloody Baron storyline. Basically, you help him find his wife and daughter, and then in return, he'll give Geralt information about Ciri because he knows where, at least he has some idea where Ciri might have gone. And then once you done with that, you go to Novigrad, which is a city. Velen, before I go into that, Velen is like a swamp, like it's very swampy, like marshland kind of area. And then you go from that to Novigrad, which is, like I said, a city. And through there, you find Zoltan, who's an old friend of Geralt, and Dandelion, who's also, like, if you're familiar with the Witcher universe, Dandelion and Geralt are best friends. Like, Geralt's best friend, you know, they've known each other for ages. Yeah, so, and then you obviously you find them, and you ask Dandelion maybe if he knows where Ciri is, and he doesn't. So then you go to Skellige. And to Skellige, you go there because there's supposed sightings of Ciri in Skellige. But, yeah, all 3 regions are so different from one another. Like I said, you got the swampy, like, areas of Velen, you got the booming city of Novigrad, and then you got the islands of Skellige, which are, like, very Viking-esque. Like, they got, like, like a Viking style to it. There's also the areas in the DLC as well, but I'll get to that. I'm probably going to make a DLC video, so I'll get to that in the future. But yeah, those 3 areas are just vastly different from one another, and all of them bring their own unique story. But obviously, like, in my opinion, the Velen story is the best, like I said. So, another thing with The Witcher 3 is that you don't actually need to play The Witcher 1 and 2 in order to get the full experience of The Witcher 3. Like, obviously, playing The Witcher 1 and 2, it adds a lot to the world building and, like, the storytelling and all that, but you can definitely just start from The Witcher 3 if you want. That's what I did. I still haven't played The Witcher 1 and 2 yet, because I need to get a PC before I can do that, but, you know, once I get a PC, I'll 100% play through those. I've also read the Witcher books, by the way, which are also fantastic. I recommend you read those if you haven't, and if you're into reading, I suggest you, you know, read the Witcher books. You know, it adds a lot to the story as well. Obviously, the books and the games are, like, 2 different things, but, you know, same characters and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, there are characters that the game added in, like, that aren't in the books. Now, since The Witcher 3 is an RPG, there are obviously a lot of RPG elements in it. Such as, you know, like, weapon upgrading, you know, like, you can pick different builds. There's, you know, like, a light combat build, so that, like, it relies on speed. There's a heavy one where it relies more on, like, damage than speed. There's ones involving signs. Now, if you don't know what signs are, it's basically magic. Like, there's fire and all that. So there's a sign one. There's an alchemy build, so if you want to, like, do a build surrounding potions, which the alchemy build is definitely the strongest one. So yeah, if you want to completely steamroll everything, just do that. And also, speaking of that, let's talk about the game's difficulty. The game, in my opinion, is not very hard. Even on the hardest mode, it isn't very hard. And you know what? That's fine. Not every game needs to be Dark Souls. And, like, and obviously, if you think this game's hard, just play on easy. Like, you know, just do that. That's what difficulties are there for. If you think you might struggle, just play it on easy. And then if you think that you'll do better in like on your second playthrough, just ramp it up. See if you can try hard. In my opinion, Death March, which is the hardest difficulty, it's not too difficult in my opinion, but that's just me. You know, to some other people it might be more difficult. But yeah. Decision making is also a very crucial part of this game. Like, obviously there's a lot of quests that have different outcomes depending on what dialogue you select and what actions you do and all that. And in my opinion, there are a lot of good quests that utilize having to make a decision and, you know, what outcome is the best and all that kind of stuff. Not only with the main quests, but a lot of the side quests as well. That's another thing I need to talk about. The side quests in this game are arguably better than the main quests. Like, the side quests are insane in this game. Like, with most RPGs, like, even the good RPGs, there are a lot of just, you know, fetch quests, like, really boring side quests that mean nothing and you just don't want to do. In this game, however, majority, like 90% of the side quests actually have meaning behind them and have just as much thought put into them as the main quest does. And I think that's awesome. A lot of RPGs don't do that, and I think that's very hard to pull off. And I'm really like glad that this game is so detailed and so it puts so much thought into everything. Really, obviously this game does have shortcomings, but in my opinion, they're so insignificant that the good things about this game just cancel it out. Really. Some of the shortcomings I can think of is that the combat, I mean, it's not terrible, but it's definitely not the best I've seen. Like, it's okay. The combat's alright. I guess that it's somewhat of a negative. Another negative is the crafting system. I think the crafting system's kind of annoying in this game, and I don't really care all that much for it. But, aside from that, I don't really have any other kind of complaints about this game. I guess a lot of people might find the pacing to be a bit of an issue, because it's not all just combat 24/7. There is a lot of story and a lot of dialogue, and obviously if you're not really a fan of that, then you probably won't enjoy this. But if you're not a fan of that, you probably just aren't a fan of RPGs in general, because most RPGs are like that, so yeah. The open world is pretty vast in this game. Like, it's massive. All the regions are pretty big. There's a lot of, like, even not including side quests, there's a lot of just, like, random stuff. Like, there's just random, like, markers that are scattered throughout the map, and you just go to them. You can maybe find, like, a cool sword, or, you know, like, just a cool item. Like, you can do stuff like that. Obviously, there's a lot of enemies, like a lot of monsters. There's a lot of variety with the monsters. Like, there's different categories and like categories within those categories of just monsters. And oh yeah, that's another thing I forgot to mention. There's side quests, but there's also Witcher contracts. Now, Witcher contracts, what they are is obviously people want your help because there's obviously like a monster like bothering them or like killing people, so basically they pay you to take care of it because you're a witcher. And you can also, you know, haggle with them and, you know, maybe increase the price of what they pay you. You can't do it too high though, otherwise then they'll just revert it back to the original price, so just be careful with that if you plan on doing that. But yeah, the Witcher contracts are pretty fun. They're kind of repetitive, I guess, because it's basically just the same stuff of just killing monsters, but I'd say the monsters are definitely, there's a lot of variety and, like, with them, so I guess it's not too repetitive, because it's, you know, it's mostly different monsters every time and different outcomes and all that sort of stuff, so I guess it's not too much of a complaint. But, yeah, the Witcher contracts are pretty fun. Obviously the side quests, like I mentioned before, are fucking great. The main story, I know that I've seen a lot of people that don't really care for it, but I really like the main story, especially Velen. But yeah, that's probably going to wrap up part 1. Obviously there's going to be a few parts to this one, maybe 3, which is probably going to be my longest review series yet. But there's just a lot to say about this game, so stay tuned for part 2, everyone, and see you later.